I don't know if you've noticed this, I certainly have, but in South Korea, when there are controversial stories involving the children, grandchildren, executives, family members, or even the founders of big companies, the Chaebols, Samsung, Hyundai, those stories are often tolerated, sometimes even celebrated. And apparently, it's because they are part of the national development narrative of South Korea. They were part of that group that pushed Korea up economically. And so people give them a pass. So people think that if they use their privilege or their power, that's a given. Of course, you're already rich, so you're going to have more privilege than I will ever have, and you're going to have more chances than I will ever have. That's fine. That's expected. But when somebody from the bottom rises without going through the traditional means, meaning getting employed in the lowest position and then working thousands of hours, getting promoted one step at a time, if you don't go through that path and you became successful, they think that, wait a minute, that's not possible because I'm working just as hard. And the mere fact that I didn't get that success and that opportunity, it means that you did something wrong. You did something criminal. You did something that was really unfair. They call this the spoon theory. This is when they classify people depending on their socio-economic classes when they were born. Of course, the gold spoon for the chaebols, and then you have the silver spoon, the bronze spoon, and then the dirt spoon. And so when somebody who was born with the dirt spoon become successful, they feel that that's not possible because we're all working just as hard. I'm just as good as you are. You became successful not because you're better, but because you played unfairly. And because Bang Shiyuk remains visible despite the case, they feel it is even more unfair because he gets invited to state affairs like the inauguration, and now he forged a partnership between HYBE and National Museum of Korea. Now, a lot of people are going to say, but there are many other celebrities and popular people who got involved in controversies, but why are they not being treated this way? Well, because quite frankly, there are no other artists that can really claim the type of success that BTS and Bang Shiyuk put on the table for South Korea. There really isn't anybody. There have been Oscar winners, national pride of South Korea, but in terms of mainstream that calls global attention, getting mainstream attention from other countries like the US or Europe, that's just Bang Shiyuk and BTS. And so this is a good target for them. Very visible and glamorous, a good sample, basically. And that explains why some people are wondering whether the public's and the police's or the justice system's loss of interest with the Kakao case is all because they found a new target, a more glamorous one and a more popular one in Bang Shiyuk. On October 21, the Seoul Southern District Court's 15th Criminal Division, under Judge Yang Wan-song, acquitted Kakao founder Kim Bom-so of stock manipulation charges related to the SM Entertainment acquisition battle between HYBE and Kakao back in February 2023. Prosecutors had sought 15 years in prison and 500 million won fine, accusing Kim of conspiring to keep SM's share price above HYBE's tender offer price of 120,000 won in order to block HYBE's bid for management control. But the court ruled that Kakao's trading activity did not meet the legal threshold for market manipulation. The judge said even after examining purchase ratios, intervals, and order volumes, there's insufficient basis to conclude the traders were intended to fix market prices. The judge added that proving intent to manipulate the market was impossible with the evidence presented. The prosecution's claim that Kim ordered subordinates to bring it peacefully as a coded instruction to rig prices also fell apart. Witnesses said they never heard the phrase, and the court accepted the defense interpretation that Kim meant resolve the dispute with HYBE peacefully. The acquittal after a high profile indictment in August 2024 and 3 months in detention reinforces one of the hardest truths of financial crime law. Intent is difficult to prove. But some are now wondering, did public hungry South Korean judges and police find a new and more glamorous target? Enter Bang Shi-hyuk. While Kim walks free, HYBE founder Bang Shi-hyuk is still under investigation for alleged violations of the Capital Markets Act. According to the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency's Financial Crime Investigation Unit, Bang has been questioned twice, both sessions lasting more than 12 hours, but no charges have been filed. Police raided HYBE headquarters and the Korean Exchange earlier this year and imposed a travel ban when Bang returned from the US on August 11, 2025. The allegation? In 2019, Bang told several investors, including venture and private equity backers, that Big Hit Entertainment, now HYBE, had no plans to go public. Those investors then sold their shares to a private equity fund tied to Bang, only for HYBE to list the following year. As the stock soared, the fund sold its holdings, and Bang reportedly received 190 billion, about 140 million US dollars, through a profit-sharing agreement. Regulators have treated this as a potential breach of the Capital Markets Act Article 178, which prohibits undisclosed unfair trading schemes. The Securities and Futures Commission formally filed a criminal complaint in July 2025, following findings from the Financial Supervisory Service or FSS. Still, police officials say progress is limited and that a legal review is ongoing. Intent is hard to prove. The same phrase, intent is hard to prove, sits at the center of both stories. In Kakao's case, the court didn't rule that no manipulation occurred. It ruled that the prosecution failed to prove intent. In Bang Shi-hyuk's case, intent will likely decide everything. Did Bang intentionally mislead investors to force them to sell? Or was he managing an unstable company during a volatile period? Let's look at the evidence. People argue that it all started in the designated audit of August 2019. HYBE had already applied for a designated audit. It's usually a mandatory IPO step, but this one was actually requested by investor Legend Capital, who was under pressure from its own limited partners or the people that are actually investing their money, demanding liquidity. Many claim that the audit was evidence that IPO planning had began, even if management hadn't announced it publicly yet. However, there are documents, including emails to investors, proving HYBE requested the audit because of Legend Capital's request. Fiduciary duty, not deception. By late 2019, Big Hit's investor structure had become complex. Major backers included Stick Investments, who was in for 104 billion won since 2018. Early venture capitalist LB Investment exited in 2018, and a web of funds like Easton Fund 1 and 2, Legend Capital, and Alpen Route Asset Management, many of whom were under growing pressures from their own limited partners to liquidate their holdings. Amid this, Choi Yu-jung, a founding vice president of HYBE, then Big Hit Entertainment and one of Bang Shi-hyuk's earliest executives, wanted to sell her shares. In 2019, she decided she wanted to exit. And that created additional pressure inside HYBE because her shares were substantial, about 2.7% of the company. At that time, several other investors were also looking to exit. And that sale triggered a scramble to find a new buyer, which led to the creation of Easton Fund Number 1, organized by Kim Jung-dong, who later became HYBE's chief investment officer. Under corporate law, Bang had the fiduciary duty as the company's largest shareholder and CEO to inform all shareholders of their rights and available options. He also had to inform them of the sale of many of HYBE's early investors. At that time, Big Hit's prospects were uncertain. The company had no secured outside funding beyond Stick, and talks with major domestic bank reportedly approached to purchase the outgoing investor shares collapsed when the bank withdrew interest citing market volatility. With no institutional buyer stepping forward, Bang was effectively left with no one willing to absorb the shares. To protect company stability and honor the investor's right to exit, Bang personally guaranteed the value of the shares so that Easton Fund 2, a newly formed private equity fund, could proceed with the purchase. He promised Easton's limited partners that if Big Hit failed to go public within 3 years, he would repay the investment plus 7%. If the company succeeded in going public, he would receive 30% of the sale proceeds. All the funds involved, Easton, Legend, and Alpenroute, ultimately sold their holdings at a gain once HYBE'S IPO materialized. An uncertain time for Big Hit. Context matters. When these transactions were made, Big Hit's future was nothing but guaranteed. In 2020, the world shut down. BTS world tour was canceled and they had to reimburse everyone's money. And the company's second group, TXT, was barely a year old. BTS, effectively the entirety of HYBE, had no heir apparent. On top of that, military service loomed. Jin was nearing enlistment age, and speculation swirled over how the group would survive that transition. Investor confidence was low. You do have to understand that it's very rare for many of these boy bands to come back to their former glory once they finish their military service. Many of them still continue to become popular, but not as popular as before. The fear was not unreasonable. When Big Hit finally filed for IPO in May 2020, it did so in a global climate of fear. A pandemic ravaged entertainment industry with collapsing concert revenues. The stock listing wasn't a guaranteed triumph. It was a risk. Even Dynamite, released on August 21, 2020, came after the IPO paperwork was submitted, and few could have predicted it would become a global hit. In fact, many armies doubted it was going to make a dent given that it was an English song. Seen in that light, Bang's 2019 actions look less like manipulation and more like a triage, a founder stabilizing his company when confidence and liquidity were both running out. Now, let's just go back to 2020. Remember, the world was shut down. BTS's world tour was canceled, and their next group, TXT, was barely a year old. The IPO filing came May 2020, but global uncertainty made new investments unlikely. Dynamite wasn't released until August 21, 2020, 6 days after HYBE filed its registration. No one knew it was going to be a global hit. A lot of people wanted it to be a hit, including, for sure, the then CEO of Colombia and, of course, the entirety of armies. But many doubted it was going to be. No one knew it was going to lead to Butter and four other number one Billboard Hot 100. And no one knew it was going to lead to more demand. Different cases, same standard. The Kakao and HYBE cases aren't the same. Kakao faced allegations of price manipulation. HYBE'S case concerns pre-IPO disclosure and private profit sharing, but they share one thread: intent. In both, prosecutors argue that there was a hidden motive to distort market fairness. In both, defense lawyers say these were business decisions, not crimes. But the judge was still right, at least in one thing. Some in Korea's finance community now ask whether, after Kim Bom-soo's acquittal, Bang Shi-hyuk has become the next high-profile target, and to a lot of people, a better one because it's more glamorous. It wouldn't be the first time Korea's justice system faced criticism for selective enforcement. To be fair, it's just like that in almost every other country. Celebrity and public sentiment often color outcomes. Entertainers convicted of assault have walked away with suspended sentences, while corporate figures draw years of trials for ambiguous intent. Still, the judge in Kakao was right. Proving intent in complex financial dealings is notoriously difficult. Whether the same restraint will be shown in Bang Shiyuk's case remains to be seen. It's not puzzling that some believe there's a political play, especially because of the return of BTS for their group activities, and they're going to bring with them cultural and economic influence and, of course, global attention. Still, the reaction to this case remains muted in the US. In the US, corporate investigations like this, it's pretty much routine. We get it three for a dollar, as the saying goes. Executives and founders and CEOs, they get indicted, they get fined, they go to jail, they get forced to resign, and nobody really pays attention to it. And more importantly, they don't derail the company's growth or the reputation. I think Americans are largely desensitized to it unless it's something salacious or controversial, then maybe we'll pick it up as a form of entertainment. But look at what happened and how fast we moved on from the Coldplay couple scandal. Culturally, those South Koreans, they treat corporate leadership as an extension of their national identity. And I think it is because of their fast ascent to success, economic success after their liberation. So I think their identity became so intertwined with their economy. So while the US separates the individual from the institution in Korea, it's the same. The downfall of a leader feels like a threat to their collective pride. But in America, it's just another Tuesday. But the difference is very telling in the US whenever they talk about Hybe, for example, the new management setup they have, or when they open their Latin America office, or whenever they cover the success of Cat's Eye or the rappers or artists under quality control, nobody really talks about Bang Shiyuk. I think his prominence is primarily a Korean phenomenon, and that is really amplified by politics, by public expectation, and by a different type of media ecosystem that blurs the line between national achievement and national scandal. So, but I think ultimately the question isn't really about is he guilty or not. I think this case is more a question of the type of relationship that Koreans have between their culture and their economy and their justice. I think this is going to signal the direction by which they're going to go in terms of their culture and how they can separate that from their economy. Let's see what's going to happen. Would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave them in the comment section below. And as always, you can say whatever it is that you want to say, just please do so respectfully. Also, if you can, please follow me on XIG, but more importantly on Patreon, because that's where the community is. Lots of great conversations happening. If you want, we have a free tier just in case you want to try things out first. But more importantly, please consider donating to the channel. You should see the QR code right now. We opened the online magazine, asianentertainmentandculture.com. We are on a soft launch, but hoping to do a proper launch by next month or at the end of the month. Who knows? Any suggestions, recommendations would be highly appreciated. Also, please consider supporting my YouTube membership. I do have a live stream once a month, and then, sorry, once a week. And of course, exclusive videos that don't go public ever. That's it. Thank you for spending time with me and for listening to me. Please like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification button if you haven't already. So, but more importantly, please share the channel, send the link to your friends, to your family members, and leave a link on your social media.